like brindle mastiffs, really big dogs, and then another dog, and I don't remember what the third dog was, smaller, off leash in front of the dog park. And I was like, oh, that would make me uncomfortable if I was walking around the lake because they were off leash. So of course we know that no dogs are supposed to be outside of the dog park off leash. So it was odd that I just kind of made note of that, and then I got a call the next day um, from a woman whose daughter had been bit, and actually I think it was by again a person in the dog park that had multiple dogs, um, and then after, so I emailed, and then the 13-year-old boy got bit before we could even get to this meeting. And the person who called has a good point in that her daughter sent us the letter, and with, I thought, great suggestions. I did some research on dog park rules, and I think they're very, very valid. And I think, we need to put some parameters around what's happening in the dog park. I also have had a report that a person who's bringing multiple dogs only has one leash, right? So they're taking one dog out at a time to the car via the leash while the other dogs are inside, and they're not overseen at that point. And so I guess it begs the question as to how many dogs can be controlled by one person, and I thought, again, Caitlin's suggestions were excellent in the fact that, do we allow female dogs that are in heat in there, and what kind of problems do that cause? Do we have size differentiations for how dogs play in the park together? Do we make sure that everybody's not only up to date with their registration and their vaccinations, but also make sure they have their anti-tick, anti-flea medication, those kinds of things. I think the trouble is always in how that's regulated, but I would like the council to do some work on some parameters and some signage, because I think we obviously have a situation that's not the best right now, within having two people get bit, within close proximity of one another date-wise. So just brought it forward for discussion.
Well, did you ask for somebody from the PD to be here tonight, Mr. Crozier?
We did, but I believe the chief is at the mayor's. We did speak with.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Both Mr. Kosher and myself were at the NICOM event, and Chief Clifford happened to be there. And he told us that he's going to be coming up with a list of rules. In the meantime, have those posted at the dog park. Is also going to have additional patrols for the animal control officers, have them going by, looking for dog licenses, making sure those are in play. He made an excellent suggestion that we might want to take up as a council of, if you don't have a dog license, let's say you're new to the area, they give you a ticket, but you have a week or whatever we come up with, just as an example, to get your dog license, and then the ticket is rescinded, otherwise you're ticketed. And so he made some suggestions along those lines of how we could work with the enforcement aspect to try to alleviate some of these issues.
Yeah, because there's been dogs that have been killed in that park. The problem we deal with, and I don't know the problem is going to be enforcement like everything else. Do we have the manpower to go there, and do we need a guard at the gate? And so this is going to be a problem. But I think Mr. Thorne let us know that dog that bit the 13-year-old, it was supposed to have been quarantined. That dog shouldn't even been out. So I don't know what that lady was charged with. What was she charged with? That sounds like something kind of criminal. If she had a dog that was supposed to be quarantined and brought it back to the park and it bit someone else.
Off the top of my head, I can't list every charge that she has. I can tell you that there are a number of proceedings pending, I think some of which are even going to take place this week.
Yeah, that's serious stuff. So again, it's not the dogs. We have irresponsible dog owners. That's the problem. They should be licensed, I think, sometimes to know what they're at, why they have dogs, and why they haven't behaved this way. People want to go to dog parks, have their dogs play with the other dogs, and have fun. When they get aggressiveness like that, and it leads to this, and it was a double whammy. We had two people get bit. Apparently, it was from the same dog owner's dogs, whether same dogs or not, I don't know, but it's serious stuff, you know, somebody could really get hurt bad, much worse than that happened, so it's something we do have to address too. Well, just, you know, I think get the PD in here with their ideas and then, you know, massage them a bit so we can get this to work the best way possible.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what the chief was talking about this morning with us, that he's going to definitely look at some other municipalities and towns and villages, what their postings are, their dog rules and regulations, to immediately connect with John Coluccio to replicate some kind of signage and get the signage up there within the the confines of the dog park. But also, most importantly, as Councilman Palmetti mentioned, they are going to step up the patrol force. He has already told all his regular patrol officers to make sure they come through the park on a much more regular basis, and also our animal control as well, the weekend folks especially, to making sure that they're really coming through the park, and at least stopping over and looking at the dogs to visibly making sure they have a license and that they're properly, again, to be within those confines. But I like the idea that the chief came up again with Mr. Palmetti. He said, if somebody is called without a license or whatever, issue that ticket, similar to if you call it with a headlight out. You get issued that ticket and they usually give you 3 or 4 days or whatever. There's a grace period. But at the same time, the animal control officer will have an application to apply for the dog license as well. Because let's be honest, the reason why a lot of our folks do not get the license is because of the rabies vaccination. That to me is really one of the hindering piece as far as coming down here and getting a license in the first place. And I know the county still has their some schedules of the free rabies clinics, and I think maybe we can attach that to the application as well, so that we can make sure that they take advantage of that. But I think it's going to be good. And again, the other point Chief Clifford indicated to us was that he strongly believes this was an isolated incident with the same dog owners and the same dogs. Unfortunately, it happened twice, but he truly believes it was the same owners and a lack of responsibility, as we've all said to the table here. So that's my comment.
I'd like to suggest that we put on the agenda in 2 weeks the ticketing and rescinding as long as they get their dog license. That idea should be on the agenda in 2 weeks if it would. And the other piece is I think we should suggest strongly to the chief that, yeah, peak times are obvious, but we need to also have some patrols during non-peak times, because let's be honest, people get smart and they'll bring their dogs during non-peak times. So we need to make sure we have some patrols through that so they're randomized.
Go ahead, Ms.
And obviously, as we said, the enforcement is always going to be a challenge because we can't be there 24/7. But I think the signage is at least going to help. You know what I mean? Because at least it puts some parameters around it. And Robin and her daughter are here, and her leg is distressing looking. I mean, it's not okay. You know, I mean, it's a pretty serious situation, and so my heart goes out also to certainly to Caitlin, but also that 13-year-old boy. I think we're on the right track to try to, you know, and we have a lot of great dog owners and a lot of great dogs in the city, but I think we need to do our due diligence at this point.
Go ahead, Ms. Porter.
Yeah, to the point that Mr. Rocco made about different sections, I don't know, I don't have a dog, so I don't spend time in the dog park, but there should be, if there isn't sections for different dogs, people with smaller dogs, you know, your dogs play over here and larger dogs over there. I thought that was part of what they were doing when they designed this, but I don't know that happened. I beg your pardon? And so if it's not something, I don't know if we have even spoken to the folks who were advocating and help put together the dog park. But since we're having this problem, I think they would need to reach out to again, because they're obviously all dog lovers. That's why they came up with the idea of the dog park. So that definitely I think we should look at. And additionally, as we move forward trying to create more legislation, I think we should definitely look at the current legislation and see what it says in terms of ticketing and what happens, to make sure maybe that base is already covered, but if it's not, that we're not adding something that creates a problem for people who are visiting. And I know that you said, well, you know, if you're visiting, we'll give you some leeway, but definitely look at our current legislation so we're not, you know, including something that doesn't need to be included.
Just to clarify something, but it wasn't talking about visitors. If you're new to the area or you don't have your dog license, it would be you'll get a ticket and then you have a certain period of time to get your dog license, otherwise the ticket sticks. So just to clarify,
That's if the people have identification.
Right.
well,
I think another big issue is what Ms. Carrazzo brought up, and I witness this in Hilbert's Park all the time. Many people come into a park, they have their dogs leashed, as soon as they get to the park, the whole park becomes a dog park. I had that happen in Hilbert's Park last year, ongoing, finally, because animal control couldn't get there on time, it's one of those things. So I had to videotape it, then I had to sign the complaint. So they finally did something, because there's people that are walking their dogs on a leash, and a dog comes running at them. What are you supposed to do when you're in an open area? I mean, we do have a leash law in the city, but there's many people that just don't abide by it. That's another sad thing. So I think we need more enforcement across the board. Animal control does a great job, the two full-time workers there, they do a fine job, but it's a tough job, because again, we have a lot of irresponsible dog owners, unfortunately, in the city. There's many responsible, but there's many that are irresponsible, and that's what causes the problem. And we need that leash law has to be obeyed.
Right. And let me just add, in terms of the enforcement, it has to be all parks, because they come to other parks and they don't have a dog park, and they do exactly what you said.
The whole park becomes
The
a
whole
dog
park.
park.
So we talked about signage. Is it possible that we can have them look at the signage there and we put these signs, I guess, like ASAP?
I think that was the intent, was the chief is putting it together, and then, we'll discuss it, but to get something up sooner rather than later.
So we want to hold this for 2 weeks, bring back 2 weeks, and then have chief here come up with, kind of work something up in the next week or so.
They should have the signs up within the next week or so. Yes, absolutely, as far as that part, enforcing that, getting some kind of rules and regulations up there. And again, whether or not they come before the council, Carl,
Can always
that's something we have
tweak
to do. We can always tweak it if we have to. But again, they do want to put them up there, to make sure that we have some kind of, and again, he really made the commitment of having it enforced. But again, as we've all said, it's got to be continued enforcement. It's kind of like the airports, we have a plane crash, suddenly all of a sudden you got heightened security, and then we forget about it, 2-3 months after. I think it's important, to all our residents and visitors, because you have the Rose Garden right there, you have so many activities going on in the park. You walk your dog every day, the chief is there every day, so it's a crown jewel. It really is a beautiful area. We want to make it safe, but again, throughout the entire city.
Just one quick question, maybe on if the dog park itself is an important dog for small dogs and large dogs, is this something maybe the Parks Advisory Committee should look at and maybe make some suggestions on how to do that? It shouldn't be real hard to do it, I think.
You know what? We're walking Wednesday. Didn't we all get an email on that? Did anybody-
Thursday.
Is it Thursday? And they are actually walking Central Park, so that'll be very interesting.
Yeah.
Let's get a hold of Richard Attorney. Make sure they do that. Because I'm not on that committee, but I think that's important. Now, I've gone to many dog parks. Being quite honest, I have never seen separate sections for large or smaller dogs. I don't know how you do that with the one that we have there, so I've never seen it. But again, it's something let's bring up and let them take a look at it. And, it's important to look at, so. Yeah, but again, I think they're going Thursday, 12 noon, 2 o'clock, something like that.
That was 5:30, but I'll see if I can find it.
Something like that they're walking, so.
So you said it's the Park Advisory, Recreation Advisory Commission that's going, so are you reaching out to the folks that came up with dog park in the first place? I think that, since there's issues concerning it, that's a good group that we should,
I sent an email to Lori Badger.
Did you?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, because she was with 1, 2, 3, or 9 here,
Yes.
so no, I haven't checked my email today.
Okay.
I sent her over again. But that she was the one, there was many, you and I, we attended several of those meetings when we were first starting, way back. Finally came to fruition, getting it done. But again, our apologies to both of you, your family, and everybody, that we certainly, very sorrowful for what happened, and I think the council will certainly continue to act on it and make sure that this is a safe park, because it's a great place for our dogs.
On that idea about dog parks, just to throw it out there, are they gonna get into Bellevue, Parks Advisory?
Yes.
We should really look at the tennis courts in Hilbert's Park and think about converting that to a dog park, because
So we're not all on this email list? How did I get on the?
I don't know,
I got it right here.
I
It's
gotta reach out.
Thursday, May 3rd at 5:30 at Central Park.
May 3rd?
May 3rd? Well,
Yes,
we
May-
missed it.
That
May
was last week.
Oh,
That's what I mean, last
Already?
yeah,
Oh, so we missed it.
sorry.
All right.
Thought it was the 10th.
I did too. I thought it was this Thursday.
What
Well, we'll reach out to Rich.
I'll reach out to Rich,
Yeah, reach out.
attorney, and ask him to add,
Yeah.
you would like to be added?
Yeah, because we talked about that for at least a couple of years.
Okay,
I think it's,
well, let's not everybody.
it's rarely used for tennis, they're really not good tennis courts. The good tennis courts are where Fair Park is,
Yeah,
and
they-
that should be really rebuilt with new fencing. And if we can convert Hillers into a dog park,
That would be good. I think that would get a lot more use than what it
and we can
is
get rid of
now.
all those trees and
Because nobody uses them, and well, actually, at one point, they were talking about converting the parking. I don't know if you remember that, so when we had the parking issue, remember you can only park on one side of the
We could
street
have both.
there?
It's a big area, maybe we could have.
Yeah, because we were there this weekend doing parks cleanup, and they have all those vines
Yeah,
on
the
the fence.
vines.
They can go through, tear it down, put up a new, fix the fence and make it a dog park. That would be good.
All right.
All right, so I'll make that happen. All right, anything else? Yeah, the motion,
Motion to adjourn.
second?
I'm not in public session.
All in favor? Thank you.
All right, call to order, public service and utilities. There's 3 items on the agenda. Okay, all right. Okay, so we have 3 items on the agenda. First, the award for bid and contract for the hot in place asphalt recycling pursuant to the countywide bid.
Yes. As I know many of you are aware, we are paving the roads, we do it annually, and as we do every year for the last 7 or 8 years, we have piggybacked onto the county's highway hot place recycling program. They reached out through all of their previous bidders in the past year, and they all agreed to hold their prices the same as last year. So this was mainly just to approve
So I'll give you a.
So this was basically just to approve all the last year's paving numbers from the hot place recycling that we piggyback onto from the county.
Are there any questions? Okay, entertain a motion.
I'll move the hat in place asphalt recycling.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I do have one question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, my apologies. It just came to me. There were 3 different prices in there, county, city, and town. Why are we the highest of the 3? Is it because there's more roads, or do we have any idea why we're charging us more?
The reason that towns and cities are usually charged more is because there's more in the road. Counties and villages and stuff like that do not have water mains and sewer mains and stuff like that as much as we do in the roads. So there's more actual irons, as they call them, in the road. So it causes them to pick up and have to reset and do other work around them. So it does cause more work. So that's why we are charged more.
Well, I'm trying to get it.
No, these are not Joe Ryan. These are all private bids. You're welcome.
Contract for the hot in place asphalt recycling.
Need a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, a second item is award bid and contract for manhole frames and covers and catch basin frames and grates.
So, as you have been provided, we did go out to bid for this through the formal bid process. We had the one bidder, EJ Casting, out of Michigan, I believe. We used to also get Syracuse Casting, but they were actually taken over by EJ. So now they are the main provider of manhole frames and grates and catch basin frames and grates. But yeah, so it's just purchasing of these goods through the water department or sewer department.
So there's no one closer than Syracuse, is that what you said?
Yes.
That's the closest we've gone?
Yes, Syracuse Castings is now actually bought and owned by EJ Casting. So yes, they are the closest that they have. And I believe EJ will be shipping these from Syracuse, but that's all internal stuff that they do.
And would you know why we only had one bid?
I mean, it's just highly specific materials. I mean, we put it out to all of the United States basically for this on BidNet and everywhere else, and it was the only ones that seemed to have bid. And I feel like they're the only ones that bid regularly. It's just I haven't seen many other companies come in and ask for this type of work.
Are there other questions? Entertain a All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the last item is the award bid and contract for the City of Schenectady Annual Street Improvement Program 2018.
So this is just a breakdown of what we went out to bid for about a month. We are focusing primarily on District 2, which is everything west of State Street roughly. We focus primarily about 80% on District 2, and then the other 20% is throughout the other districts, just trying to hit the either spots we kind of put off last year due to National Grid cuts or anything else like that, or streets that may have fallen into further disrepair due to either water main breaks or just plowing or other just general disrepair.
Questions? Motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, is there anything else to come before the public service and utilities?
Move we adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Call to our health and rec, and one item on the agenda is sodium hypochlorite for swimming pool.
There it is. I guess I go. One, two, three, four. We have one. I think I gave you two more. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, City Council President, council members, Mayor is absent.
Yeah.
I'm covering for our purchasing supervisor, who unfortunately couldn't make it here today. What you have before you is a single bid made by Surpass Chemical Companies of Albany, New York, to purchase liquid chlorine or sodium hypochlorite, which is used to minimize bacteria and other hazardous contaminants within our city pool. $22,536. We request that you authorize the mayor to accept this bid and enter into a contract. The price last year was approximately $2,000 less than what you currently have before you, so about $20,000.
Go ahead, Mr. Porter.
Is this the same company last year?
This is the same company, yes.
And I may be putting you on the spot. Do you know if you received more than one bid last year, or?
We received 2 bids last year. This company and there was another company called Salak Chemical. There were 10 bids that companies downloaded, but only this bid was the one that was put in. They downloaded it, but they did not put it in.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
I'll move it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any other business for health and rec?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor? Thank you.
I will call to order the Committee on Administrative Efficiency. A couple items here before us. We have an IDA appointment of Mr. Frank Maurizio. Ann Riley, who has been serving on this board for many, many years, has turned in her resignation. And so we have one appointment, and they all serve at the pleasure of the council. I did print up the current board. Does anybody want this, what the current board is?
IDA?
Yeah, the IDA board. And there's no term limit. Of course, it is just volunteer. There's no stipend or anything attached to it. And I emailed everybody regarding if you had any other candidates, and Mr. Maurizio came forward, expressed an interest. He currently works with New York State teachers, and he's retiring in October, and is looking to get back and doing some volunteering in the city. And I think he'd be a very good addition to the board. And of course, I included his resume in the packet.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I see there's someone that's been on, you said there's no term limit. Is that somebody, I mean, is that something we can consider? There's someone who's been on here like 14 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have to wait until basically someone says, I don't want to serve anymore, in order to even have an opportunity? Because this is a pretty important board in what they do for the city.
Certainly agree. I mean, Carl, do you have any information on that, or I mean?
Off the top of my head, I think that, what the code says is you serve until you resign or somebody else is appointed to your seat by the council, but I can just confirm that.
It's at the pleasure of the council, correct?
Yes.
That's my recollection off the top of my head.
Well, I mean, that's a long time.
How about this, Porter, how about we try and get a list of how many times these folks have met and what the attendance has been of these members? So we can kind of take a look and see, again, you're talking about the two on the bottom, have they been attending, have they been around, what's been their input on board?
Mhm.
Is that something,
Definitely.
just to, at least take a look at it, and then we can maybe take, make contact with them as well.
Okay.
All right? All right, so I had a motion, and then I had a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'm going to move up to number 3 here, because number 3 will fit into the next piece. So the discussion, we were looking to permanently extend the 4-minute speaking time for public hearings. We had talked about it in January, and we at that time just did a temporary 4-minute ruling until the CDBG hearings came forward, just to see how it was working out for us. Again, that came at the recommendation of one of our speakers to possibly take a look at that and extend it. I see no problem with it. They've done a pretty good job with it. Again, something we can reconsider down the road, but again, we had only put that 4-minute in there until the CDBG public hearing. So either we have to move to extend it or bring it back to the 3-minute rule. So open for discussion and comments, whatever folks want to talk about. Ms. Porter.
I think it was a good idea to extend it to 4 minutes, and personally speaking, because I actually spoke during this public hearing the last time.
Did I touch you up?
Yeah, you did, that's what you did.
I remember that.
But the time seemed to go extremely quickly, so for something in terms of, where people are trying to make a point, it's only once, well, I shouldn't say it's only once a year, because public hearings happen a lot of times, but we don't generally have a lot of people that sign up, and, people really want to be able to make their point, so I think extending it, leaving the extended to the 4-minute time just makes sense.
Any further discussions? Mr. Reagan?
Yeah, I think it worked out fine. It was a good recommendation that was made, and, it's a public hearing. We're asking the people to come and speak. They're not telling us, they want to come up and speak. We're asking them to come and speak, so I think 4 minutes worked good. There was no problem, so I think it's a good move.
It worked very well, yeah, and again, all the speakers were right on the topic too, because I had brought that up, and I think as long as they stay on the subject, top, public hearings are top. And I can't recall any speaker that went off topic on that with the public hearing portion, so. Well, very good. Any other comments or suggestions? We're all pretty good with it? So I need a motion to move, the CW. Mr. Palomay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And then the last piece, the public comment guidelines discussion. So in light of the circumstances that occurred at our April 23rd meeting of the City Council, I immediately went home that evening to take a look and review what do we have in our city charter, regarding the City Council public meetings. And lo and behold, there was really very little to almost nothing that was in there covering what we're doing. The big thing was it says the rules of parliamentary practice as contained in Robert's Rules of Order shall govern the council. And that's kind of what we've been going by. So again, as I indicated, I actually stayed up to almost 2 in the morning that night, looking at different towns, municipalities, cities, within New York State and of course outside the state. What were they doing? What did folks have regarding public comments at whether it was a city council meeting, a board of education meeting, or town meetings? And I compiled a bunch of items and a bunch of points that I really wanted to move forward on, and I kind of did a draft. The very 2 days afterwards, I sent that draft over to Bob Freeman. Of course, we all know is the guru on open meetings laws. And believe it or not, the very next day, he sent me a reply back, which was very, very good. Unexpected almost that it came back that quick. But again, he made some recommendations of what to add, what to take out. I had done that, sent it back to him again. So what you're seeing now is actually the 4th draft of what after making the changes or recommendations that Mr. Freeman had mentioned to me. And again, the first thing that he had talked about, his first email that he sent me, I just want to read this to you. It says, to put the matter, this is again from Bob Freeman, to put the matter in perspective, as you're likely aware, the legislative declaration appearing at the beginning of the open meetings law refers to the public's right to attend, listen, and observe. The law is silent, however, with respect to the public participating during meetings. That being so, there is no obligation to permit the public to speak. However, most boards and councils do permit limited public participation, and if they do, it has been advised that they adopt reasonable rules that treat members of the public equally. And that's exactly what I'm putting forward this evening in this document for discussion. What I am going to do is I'm going to read this all the way through, just so folks who are watching completely understand what we have in here, and so that whatever is reported or talked about or put on media afterwards is actually what we had said. So bear with me here, and then I will certainly open up for discussion. Okay? So again, this is just something, rules for public comment. The city council members want to hear from members of the public whom they are elected to serve, and allow them to exercise their freedom of speech by providing multiple opportunities for the public to comment at regular meetings. As the city code requires a council president to preserve decorum, the following rules shall be in effect at council meetings. A, there are 2 public comment periods on the agenda of each city council meeting. The first provides an opportunity for members of the public to comment on the agenda items prior to the legislative action being taken by the city council. The second public comment period is held at the end of the agenda and is reserved for additional matters to be brought to the attention of the city council. B, speakers addressing the city council during the public comment periods will be asked to print their name only. This is a little bit of a change, and I just want to add here. It came again as a recommendation from Bob Freeman. As you know, what we have now is we require the name, address, and topic. And Mr. Freeman suggested because of domestic violence issues and other issues of privacy that some folks have, he suggested to go in with a name only. And again, and we can also put that as optional. So if an individual does not want to put his or her name on there, to list as optional, and of course, then we would have to bypass that person until we call for anybody else wishing to speak for the council. So that individual just would not speak. But that was one of the changes that he has suggested. So name only on the sign-in sheet provided inside the council chambers for the meeting record. If an organized group of people wish to comment on the same issue or topic, whenever practical, they should attempt to have a spokesperson speak on behalf of the group or the organization. And again, the key word there is whenever practical. We are not going to make them go as a group every time folks come up to speak on certain topics. But again, this was listed in there and again was suggested to me. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes, and the exception, of course, is at public hearings where the speakers are allotted 4 minutes, which we just approved just moments ago, after which the council president, or in his or her absence, the majority leader, and the reason I put majority leader in there is because that is according to our city charter. If the council president is not there, the president pro tem shall preside, and that president pro tem shall be the majority leader of the council. So that was not something I made up. That's actually in our charter here. Shall ask the speaker to summarize or conclude his or her remarks. During the privilege of the floor for the legislative agenda and public hearings, the speaker shall keep their comments focused upon the items under consideration on the agenda. Privilege of the floor is not an opportunity for debate, and public comment speakers should not expect a back and forth exchange with council members. Proper decorum must be observed during the public comment period by everyone present, which includes members of the city council, city employees, the speakers themselves, and other members of the public who are present. Speakers shall refrain from slanderous or obscene remarks, disruptive outbursts, threats, and other conduct that disrupts or interferes with the orderly conduct of the business of the meeting. Personal attacks on council members, the administration, city staff, or other speakers or members of the public which are unrelated to city business will not be tolerated. While clapping and other signs of support for a speaker's remarks are allowed, it should be done in such a way that it will not interfere with the meeting or prevent others from in attendance from observing or hearing the deliberative process. Signs and posters must be small enough so it doesn't impair the view of other members of the audience. This is important because we actually, a couple times we did have some signs out there. There were folks who were sitting in the back of the council chambers, said they could not see the council meeting and asked me to have some of the signs taken down. Believe it or not, according to open meetings laws, their suggested size of a sign is no longer bigger than 70 square inches. So let's just put that in perspective. A piece of paper is 8 by 10, that's 80 square inches. They're saying small piece of paper. I just didn't think that was necessary. I don't think it's right. So I just went with the portion here where they must be small enough so it doesn't impair the view of other members of the audience. So I think that's somewhere of a safe ruling there. And finally, F, if any of the violations of these rules occur, the council president may declare the speaker out of order. A majority of the council can also compel such a decision or overrule the council president's decision. And that, believe it or not, is in our city charter as well. I think it's a piece that's in there that folks are not aware of. So again, I'm just going by what had occurred on April 23rd, by me ruling a speaker out of order. Any of our fellow council members could have rose and say, Mr. Chairman, I object to your decision, and I would like to have a second to overrule the chair's decision. Immediately upon a second of that, the city clerk, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, the city clerk will then take the roll to overturn the chair. If the chair is overturned, then that speaker will certainly have the right to proceed and continue to speak. Because again, by the chair ruling a person out of order, that is his or her interpretation of what he or she feels is out of order. So that's why at least now the council can overrule the chair's decision. At the same token, if the chair does not rule somebody out of order, but you as a council member feel that somebody's being personally or verbally attacked, you as a council person can also rise and say, Mr. Chairman, I believe this person's out of order, and we need a second on that as well. Once that's seconded, we immediately take a roll of the council, and if we get a 4-3 or a 4 majority, then that person is ruled out of order by a sitting council member. So again, it's not just up to the chair to declare somebody out of order, and there's the option for you to overrule the chair. And again, that is currently in our city chart. Am I correct on that, Mr. Peltico, that with the voting procedure and all that?
Yes.
Okay. And of course, finally, then, if the speaker does not immediately stop speaking, the council president will call a 5-minute recess, which we have done in the past. And any appropriate actions after the recess may constitute removal from the meeting. So again, I just want to be clear that my opening paragraph really states for itself. City council members want to hear from the members of the public who are elected to serve and allow them to exercise their freedom of speech. And so that is really what the intent here of this is. But again, to have some rules and decorum that I think really we need to have at our council meetings. As I mentioned to some of the reporters who are here, I met individually with every single council member to discuss what I was going to bring forward here this evening. Some folks had made some changes, and I had made those changes accordingly. But some I left on for discussion here this evening for the rest of the council to talk about and entertain. So, with that being said, it took up more than my 3 minutes. So, questions or concerns, Mr. Palmer?
I apologize, I should have brought this up sooner, but the one thing I would like to see included is not an address, but whether or not the person actually lives in the city. I think that's an important piece of information. Oftentimes we have debates, and whether or not the person lives in the city, I think can be useful for us helping make a decision. Not a specific address.
Just say Schenectady or Niskayuna,
Yes.
Scotia Glenville.
Right.
Or
Or Schenectady or not Schenectady.
And again, what Mr. Freeman had mentioned, again, going with Mr. Freeman,
Yeah.
he said it doesn't matter if you live in Schenectady or Timbuktu was the word that he used. And I wonder, where is Timbuktu? That it doesn't matter where the individual is. To your point, let's say CDBG funding. I'm just taking that one. We have folks coming from different areas who are talking about an organization. We really want to hear from our city residents, I'm thinking.
Sometimes it's important, but not always. So I think that could be useful.
All right, the city. Ms. Porterfield, you had your hand up.
Yeah, actually, and we discussed this, Mr. Kosher, we talked about people who might be victims of domestic violence or for other reasons. And I thought, my understanding was that for that reason, we weren't going to include what city they live. That's why, that was the reason that we were just having their name.
Yeah, that is true, right. That's right. Because I'm gonna pick on my wife, let's just say Barb Kosher signs in Barb Kosher Schenectady, as opposed to just Barb Kosher. Feedbacks, concerns on that? That is what Mr. Freeman said, though, that was his concern.
I understand the concern, I'm sensitive.
And then again, that's where you also put down that it should, to possibly list optional as far as signing in, which means that if you come in and you don't sign in on the sheet, but you still should have to state your name, I'm thinking, right, when you come to address the council? Am I correct for the record, for that record? Should that person still state the name?
I don't think so.
Right, but not necessarily the address, though. Right? All right, any other discussion, Ms. President?
Yes, as we discussed in our meeting, I'm very uncomfortable with even recommending that a spokesperson speak on behalf of a group or an organization. I just feel like we should invite everyone, and everyone should feel open to come and express themselves the way they feel about a topic. We know that naturally sometimes groups of people come to the rail and have, the group stands while one person speaks, but I think to even suggest it is kind of deters people from, or could make people feel uncomfortable if all 20 people want to speak on a subject. I mean, we've had situations where people were very passionate about what they were speaking about, and they all came at it from a different angle, and they all had things that were important to them to support the point. So I would like to request that is removed. We also talked about the subjectivity of what a personal attack is, and I still have concern with that.
Right.
We are public officials, and the public is our boss, and they do have the right to express their opinion. And we have our right to rebut after they are done speaking and have no opportunity to speak at that point. So I don't know. I kind of grapple with this. I feel like, we've had the simple rules in place of not using profanity, not raising your voice, and being respectful. And that seems to have covered things up until this point. So I'm not sure, I just feel like, and the other thing that I discussed with you in our meeting was some rules around the speaker's conduct, the president's conduct, that is, in the fact that, at what point is there any rules around the president interrupting the speaker and flustering the speaker and getting the speaker's thoughts out of sync, or whatever the case may be, because I've seen that occur also. So to me, to add some balance to this would also be to put some confines around the council president and when the council president can interrupt the speaker specifically. That's my input. But ultimately, I feel like up until this past Monday, we have been going along fine with the rules that were in place. So I don't know. I think that the voice of the public is the most important voice that we hear.
Yeah. And again, that's why I put the open paragraph, Ms. Brown, because we are not taking away the freedom of speech. We certainly aren't doing that, and they certainly have ample opportunities to come up to speak with us and express their concerns. But again, as the role of the council president, I think it's up to him or her to make his or her interpretation of what he feels or she feels is out of order, or a personal attack on an individual, whether it's a council member, whether it's a mayor, whether it's anybody. And again, that is why the other point of order is in there, that the majority of the council can rise. You can rise up as a council member and say, excuse me, I object to your ruling. And so you do have a way of overruling the chair at the same time. Going back to the whenever practical, that's the reason I put the wording whenever practical is in there. There are many towns and cities actually that do a minute. They do 30 minutes, for example, of public speaking. Once that 30 minutes is over, the public comment session is done. So if somebody comes up and speaks for 10 minutes, now you've got 20 minutes remaining, and that is why that piece was put in there. Now, certainly we don't have that. We go 3 minutes per person, organization. The word whenever practical, I think, kind of covers us. But your feeling is you think somebody would be scared, a group would be scared of that wording? Is that what you're
I feel
feeling?
very
Ms.
strongly
Ms.?
that that shouldn't be included. I don't want any group to feel like they have to appoint a spokesperson because there's even
Okay.
a hint of that. I think every single person should feel like it is their right and privilege to come to the rail and express themselves to us as public servants. And just to talk a little bit back on what you were saying, when I was council president, I actually had a conversation with Corporation Council because I was very concerned that I may be letting people go too far. And so I wanted to know if there were confines that I wasn't respecting or wasn't invoking that I should. And at the time, Corporation Council explained to me that as long as people aren't swearing, they aren't raising their voice, and they're being respectful, they really can speak to whatever they choose to speak to. So to me, it's still, I still struggle with it. I do. I feel like it's a slippery slope to leaving what a citizen has a right to speak about to the interpretation of a group of people. And I don't, and I understand that we can rise, but as the council functions right now, I'm not sure that that would be effective.
Okay.
So.
Well, so if the rest of the council agrees, can we just go back to her, Ms. Brazel's point there? How does anybody else feel about the organized group wishing to comment whenever practical? Is there a majority that want to take that out? Do we want to leave it in? Are we comfortable with it? You want to take it? I mean, any feedback, folks? Because here's the thing, I really want to get this moved today. Because being quite honest, it does not need a requirement of a vote of the council. The council president can invoke this, the rules right here. So we don't need a majority of votes. But I do want to get something out here so that we can move on this and get the information out to the public as well. Somebody was saying, how are you going to get the information out to them? Well, for the first few months at least, we're looking at least stapling this to the agendas, that are present there in the chambers. And of course, the sign-in sheets would read differently as well. If we move the address and the topic. And I'm thinking also in there, we can include some of these rules in that space that we're no longer going to be using to take up the rest and kind of have the rules in that sign-in sheet as well. So can I just get a little feedback just on this and Ms. Porterfield?
Well, I think the first question to be asked is,
Practical piece.
why, for this particular piece about why, having a spokesperson, why do you feel the need that it needs to be in there? I mean, is there a particular reason you think it should be in there? I think that's where we should start.
It was in several towns and cities of what they were using currently.
Oh.
And that's why I said, that is where this came. None of this was made up by myself or anybody else. I took a majority, and again, I read many towns and school boards as well, what they had input and what they were using for their rules of public speaking. And this was a very common piece that was in a lot of them.
Well,
That's why I put it in there. So.
Okay, let me say that one thing that I've experienced since being on this council is that people have come to speak about the same topic, but they haven't said the same thing. It's like they actually organize how their speeches go, and maybe they number them from 1 to 10. So they're getting their point out, making sure that all the points are made, because 3 minutes is not enough to make all of them. And so that's a very organized group. So I would be in favor of removing that. I don't think it's been disruptive. It hasn't, I don't think it's been disruptive, or people have been extremely repetitive in that. So I would suggest that we just go ahead and remove it.
There's two. Anybody else? Anybody else okay with that? Just pulling it? I mean,
I'm just
not a big
assuming
deal.
that pulled out because it's so loosely worded that
and
it
that's
really
what I was
doesn't mean
like.
anything.
Yes, and that's
People don't
very
want to
honest.
do it, they don't, so we might as well take it out.
And again, that was just the wording, the exact wording that many of them had per word. So that's fine.
Because I agree, people could say to talk on the same subject, and you can hear
Different
10
conversation.
different people say 10 different things on the same subject.
Okay, any other discussion, Ms. Porterfield?
Yeah, about the personal attacks, I also think it's subjective. I think we can all agree that what I might think is a personal attack, you may not, and vice versa. But I also want to bring up the topic, because this came up a number of times when people came to the rail, about whether stating a fact is a personal attack, and also the use of a person's name. Is that something that it's not written anywhere, but that a person comes to the rail and uses a council member's name?
I'll give it to Mr. Feltego.
Just one thing about personal attacks, I think you have to take the sentence as a whole, versus personal personal attacks which are unrelated to city business. So what I think that's addressed at, it's a, when you know, somebody went, you know, Council President Kosher, I don't like the tie you're wearing, you're bad at dressing. You know, that's personal attacks, it's not, got nothing to do with city business. If they say, hey, I don't like you because you're a bad city council president, yeah, that is a personal attack, but it is related to city business because city business is his job as council president. So I think it's important to be clear that it doesn't stop people from criticizing council members for the type of work they do when they have the city.
Okay. How about the use of the name? Because that's something that people have been coming to the rail saying, I know I can't say a person's name, but, and then they'll describe the person. So is that something that we're saying that they can't say council member Porterfield, whatever?
I don't see anything in here that would stop people from naming a certain council person. The only thing I can recall is, you know, they had council presidents in the past who said direct your comments to the council president, which is from Robert's Rules of Order. But there's nothing that says you can't talk about a specific council person and name it.
We just can't, you just, when we all know that we have to speak to council president.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments? John, or Mr. Reggie, go ahead.
Well, I mean, what Carl said is true. I mean, there's not too much people can say to us that isn't related to city business. We're representing the city, so as he said, say, I don't like the way Vince dressed tonight or something. Well, that's unrelated to city business. But I guess you could say it is related. I don't like the way it came to the meeting, the way it looked. So it's pretty well open, and I think, you know, I mean, that's the side of the rail I came from, so I know since the early 1990s, so I understand what it is. And we certainly don't want to put gag orders on anybody, that's for sure. And I don't think this is doing that. It's certainly loose enough, but it's still going to be, you know, it's going to be the council president's job. If he thinks something's out of order, he's going to say he thinks it's out of order, then it's up to us to agree or disagree with that. But as far as unrelated to city, I think that's a key word in this. If they could say whatever they want. Just about everything could be related to city business that we're doing, I think.
Again,
Basically, so it's people should have the right to say what they want about us, because that's, you know, we were elected to represent, and if they don't like the way we're representing, let them say it. You know, I've had a lot of things said about me. What are you going to do? I let it roll off my back, you know, and move on. You know, and if I feel that if you're going to call somebody out of order that's attacking me, I may stand up and say, please let it continue, because I want to hear it.
And that's the prerogative that is built into this, that already is built into the city charter. But I just want to reiterate, because again, I don't think all of our council members are aware that was actually in there. And again, the chair is not the dictator, if you would. I mean, he or she is the council president, but again, we're a group of 7, so you still have the way of overriding the chair. And I think that's important that we have that in there, continue to have that in there. Karen, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think this is a good, overview of the rules of Roberts, and, you know, we need some decorum in the council chambers and respect, and, I think this can accomplish that. And, you know, I still feel that everyone has the ability to come out and speak and say what they need to say in reference to city business, and I don't think we're stifling anyone on here. I do agree with this, whenever practical, they should attempt to have this, but how do you enforce that? I mean, I understand, you know, you're trying to maybe move a meeting along, but, you know, that would be difficult to enforce, and as everyone has commented, everyone can talk on the same thing, and you could have 10 different views on the same topic. So, you know, I think this is a good step.
And I think that whenever practical, that probably had to relate to boards and that they had the time limit. You know, the 30 minutes or 20 minutes. There was a couple of town boards, they only gave 10 minutes for public comments. But again, those all vary, but I think that's might have been, you know, where they came, whenever practical, again, to get the groups together, so we allowed other speakers to speak. So I did cross that sense out. John,
No, I was going to talk about that in agreement.
Take it right out. Right. Ms. Porterfield, yes?
Yeah, so with the time, people only get 3 minutes. What happens to if a person gets stopped, but then decide, okay, well, they can move ahead because we went through our process. So they're going to be able to recapture their time.
Mike, let me tell you, folks. Look at it.
If
The clock is the
it's a
clock.
question.
The clock is the clock. you know, did I pause it? If I remember, I'll certainly pause it.
Well, if you're interrupting somebody and we're taking their time, then.
But if I'm interrupting somebody, the reason I'm interrupting somebody is because somebody's out. And again, we would certainly try to get back time. Very few people, let's put it this way, very few actually use the entire 3 minutes, which is really good. And again, we always say summarize. You know, what I'll do is it'll be at the 2:45 mark. At the 2:45 mark is when I will interject to the speaker to please summarize with your comments. And we will continue to allow them to go right through. You know, and folks have gone beyond the point. And again, I messed up that one time where we actually had somebody from the state come in. Remember that state person? She had missed one of our committee meetings, and I allowed her. Was it Miller? I can't remember who, but she spoke for like almost 5 minutes, and it's like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that it was a bad mistake. But she was a state official, and what she was talking about, I thought they don't have to pertain to us. But yes, I mean, I'm not gonna add 15 seconds. I mean,
Well,
we will do what we have to do.
whatever way is reasonable. It's, okay, so this is.
You can't add time on the clock, let's put it that way. I mean, once you hit the pause, the next button is stop. So you can't say, 15 more seconds.
So when you
I
hit
can
pause,
hold
does
it.
it pause there and start from where you paused it?
That's correct, so I can just kind of wait
Yeah.
10 seconds or something. And again, I would serve, and I do not believe the lights are working anyway up there. I quite honestly don't know if they are or not. They are working now. For the last couple of months, I don't think the red lights and all that have been working. So again, I try my best, as past council presidents have, to really keep aware of the time in the clock. And it's important to keep the meeting moving as well, to give everybody an opportunity to speak to the council. And I think that's important as well, that we hear their concerns and listen to them. Because again, as we elected officials, that is what we're supposed to be doing. So, anything else with this? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna work with Chuck tomorrow to try to draft up the new sign-in sheets, and we'll send a draft out to everybody. I just hope by Wednesday.
How about a box, city resident? It could be optional, they can check off city resident box.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
You're rather than write your city.
Just a box.
Yeah, just a box.
Just check it. All right, and then someone will put little rules in there
Make sure
too.
it's optional.
Right.
Excellent.
Yes, yeah. Because again, we worked with, Mr. Freeman was excellent to work with. Like I said, he came right back every single time within the next day to respond to a email. So he was very, very good on this. And his one comment was, you're overthinking this. But I said, I want to get it right. That's the most important thing. We want to get this thing right, and that's why I confer with him. So, all right. So again, the piece we're going to take out that sentence in B there. If an organized group, and then we're gonna stick with the name only, and then have an option box to check off for the city. Schenectady, just check it and put optional after that. But we'll try to get a draft out to you, of what the sign-in sheets are gonna look like within the next few days. All right, well, thank you for that discussion. I think it was good conversation, and thank you all for meeting too.
So this came about because of the 423 meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I just, want to make a comment that we have to really consider how we got to that point. And I'm not asking for that discussion at this moment, but we have to think that, because in the 6 years that I've been on the council, this kind of hasn't need to happen, and people have behaved accordingly. I shouldn't say behaved, have conducted themselves appropriately within the meeting. So, we just have to really consider what got us to this point, and what do we as a body need to do differently so that people aren't feeling the need to come forward with what's been deemed as personal attacks.
Well, and to be very honest, I mean, last year or the year before, we actually had somebody removed from the chambers for disrespecting the chair. Well, again, you said it never happened before.
Well, no, he was screaming the F word over and over again.
Understood, so
That was
it
different.
has
And
happened.
not at me in general.
That's what I'm saying, so it has happened.
So it wasn't an attack on
Right.
a person,
No,
it
not
was just his
personally.
language that
Right.
was deemed inappropriate.
And again, I think just so we have something set here, again, these can always be changed and altered, but again, just something that we have, some basic rules and decorum for the council.
No, and I get it, I'm just saying we just need to really consider how we, what got us here, what can we do differently, because it takes two groups to contribute to whatever happens. Everybody contributes to whatever happens, and so everybody has to, this is gonna be the part that we're saying to the public. I'm just saying, as the elected body, what
And we will continue to hear them too. I mean, that's what we're there, as an opening paragraph, we are there to do that, so. Okay, very good. All right, anything else to come before our committee here? Motion adjourned, second, all in favor, say aye. Thank you very much.
Okay, I want to open city development and planning. First up is.
No, I'm handling this one.
Oh, okay. Mr. Palladino.
Chris is like a lone ranger.
Yeah,
We don't
really.
see him too much.
Get a page out of his.
Yeah, really, I don't know, Carl.
So this is just a revoke permit number 628 for La Nostra Vita, over on Clinton Street. They want to put an awning and some lighting out over the sidewalk. Everything's in order. It's been approved by all the applicable bodies that need to approve it, and it's ready for your consideration. We're recommending that you pass it.
Is there any questions?
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item is reviewing amending chapter 264 to change the zoning portion of the SBL number 49.46-4-1, also known as 1101 Forest Road. Public hearing is May 13th. I think this is just for us to call the public hearing, I believe.
No, this is just, the hearing is this coming Monday, and it's a reminder that we need legislation and information for the public.
And this is the Boys and Girls Club. Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay.
Yes.
Next item up is a ceremonial resolution for Motorcycle Awareness Month. Mr. Riggi.
May is Motorcycle Awareness Month. And we did, I think maybe I missed it last year, but anyhow, I think it's a good idea to get that out there and recognize May as Motorcycle Awareness Month. The members of the state will be here. I think I have the Hells Angels coming in to speak to Mr. Kosher.
Do we have the rules in place?
They'll get the rules. But I think this is a good thing because it's, I've done it myself, you know, sometimes you're not really watching for motorcycles, you're watching for cars, you know. It can happen quickly, and it's kind of scary, you know, if you almost hit somebody on a motorcycle. So I think it's something important, something all motorcyclists would like to have.
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I'm sorry. Yes.
There's one before we make the executive session, I want to.
Oh, executive session.
Oh, do you want to go in?
I had one other item that I wanted to ask for before.
Okay.
So I was just reminded this over the weekend. It's a ceremonial resolution. There's a group called the Schenectady Silhouettes, and they've been around for 60 years. They're a group that gives scholarships to college students, returning students, as well as younger students, and they're having their 60th anniversary on May 20th. And so I wanted to be able to give them a ceremonial resolution recognizing their contribution.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
However you want to put it, Chuck. Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Motion to go into executive session to sell houses and lands.
Wait.
No, it was this week. Item.
Okay. All right. So,
I second the motion to go in.
thank you. We're going into executive session to discuss selling of city property, and immediately after that, we'll be going into claims, which is also.
I'll be doing the Liberty Mutual tree claim, claim.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.